Welcome to my playthrough of Retro Squad Leader using 5th edition Retro rules, a advanced Squad Leader kit, map board, and my counters from the original Squad Leader game. I'm playing Solitaire Retro rules using Scenario 1 from the Solitaire rules, and I selected a Russian force using the 4 of clubs with a couple of additional elite squads for the Russians, totaling 470 points of squads and machine guns. And my victory conditions for this scenario are, this is the advanced scenario, are to get 6 of my squads off the north edge. I have a total of 8. I'm located at the south end, and I also need to destroy 355 points worth of German units. That's 75% of my score. That's assuming my cat doesn't destroy them before I do. So I'm going to get things set up. I have my German forces here at the south edge of the board in 5 conveniently located stacks. And I just got to get my guys off the north edge of the board, at least 6 of them, and destroy, again, a little over 350 points worth of German units. Let's see how I do. Okay, well, Retro has an abridged sequence of play, beginning with the rally phase, as this is the start of the game. I don't have any rallying to do, so I can move right into movement. I have a stack here with an 8.0 leader, a medium machine gun, and an elite 628 Russian squad coming out of this forest hex. I will move them up to the road. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, and then 5, 6. Get them into that building. This stack contains just 2 4.47s and another medium machine gun. We'll start on the road. And so we'll go 1, 2, and I'll go 3, 4 into this building. This stack here contains a leader, as well as a heavy machine gun and another elite infantry squad. So they can move 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll move them into this building hex here. My other 2 squads are sort of behind these woods. Got 4.47s with light machine guns. Whoopsie. I will move them. One, 2, 3. These guys I'll keep more or less hidden in these woods here. I'm going to treat this terrain area as if it's woods. Okay, that's my first movement phase. I have nothing to fire on because there are no German units yet left. Defensive fire phase is where I begin to see if there are any enemies. This being my first time playing this, I'm going to be using light resistance. I'm going to do a dice roll to check and see what my encounters are. I rolled an 8, and that means I have 6 or less to get some kind of encounter. I rolled an 8, so there's no encounter in this turn. That's going to simplify things, I believe, because my next phase will then be defensive fire. Obviously, I have no one to fire on me or close combat. So that brings us to the enemy player. We'll pause a moment and check and see if the enemy does anything, since there are no units yet on the board. It does seem that since there are no enemy units, there's no point in having an enemy phase. So we'll go back to the attacker turn, the Russian turn. Rally phase, again, no broken units, nothing to rally. I will go ahead and proceed with movement. I'll get this 9-0 leader squad with the heavy machine gun up the road with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll get them in that building, snug as a bug in a rug, and we'll move this other leader up front. These leaders are brave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's my vanguard. Probably suicidal, but we'll see what happens. And the rest of my movement, I will just I'll plow up the road and have all these units go up. So 1, 2, 3. I will leave them in this orchard. Whoopsie. My 2 4.47s and a light machine gun squads. We'll have them go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll take the risk of leaving them in the open, hoping that they won't be ambushed. Lastly, I have the 2 squads going into woods, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe that's brush. I'm treating those as if it's woods. Okay, so I believe I've done all my movement, and I'll pause for a minute and check to see what I got to do next. Well, movement phase being over, there is no one still yet to fire on. That brings me to the beginning of the defensive fire mode. I do another dice roll and see if I meet up with any resistance, or is this a very quiet evening here in the Eastern Front. I rolled boxcars, so that does not get me any kind of resistance. I needed a 6 or less on a total of 2 dice. So I go back to no defensive fire, no close combat, no rally, and I can go ahead and move once again. I'm going to scroll this board down a bit, and we will bring up the units on the rear first. Still on the road, so it's 1, 1.5. I will go ahead and plant them up here, safe and sound in this nice little building. My other rear guard, 1, 2, 2.5. We'll plant them here. My leader will go 1, 2, and into this wooden building. This other leader, I'm going to assume this takes 2 movement points to get through these little trees here into the road. So we'll call that 2, 3. I'll just move them into this other wooden building. Those leaders can communicate across the grass there if they need to. And 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll put them in this rightmost building towards the east. I believe that takes care of my movement. Again, no fire, and I'll roll again. Dice roll for seeing what kind of resistance I get. And here I rolled a 7. Again, I needed a 6. So these Germans are taking a lunch break or something, not worrying about letting me waltz through here. So once again, that takes me to defensive fire, which obviously there's no one to fire on me, no close combat, nothing to rally, and again I just continue my stroll north. Now I'm going to be getting into the open terrain for a good number of these, but let's do 1, 2, 3. We'll park them in that building. 1, 2. I'll move them back to this building. 3, 4. 1, 2. And then I'll put them in these woods. And these guys I will actually leave up front here. And I will move this set of units to this other building here for four movement points, just in case we have some kind of activity going on the eastern edge of the board. That's my movement. Obviously no one to fire on, but it's the beginning of the defensive fire phase. Let's try another roll here and see if any Germans care to join us. And I rolled an 8. No. The Germans are still cowering in their bunkers somewhere. So we'll go ahead and close the defensive fire phase, close the close combat phase, rally phase, and back to movement. This may not be the most exciting game in the world, but I maybe was a little paranoid by choosing light resistance. So I'm going to take some risks now that I've made it halfway across the board unscathed. Now's the time to get overconfident. So I'm going to go ahead 1, 2, 3. I'm going to sort of hide them behind that building just in case something does pop up. These units, 1, 2, 3. We'll move this stack with the leader. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This stack will go 1, 2, 3. We'll sort of have have these leaders bursting out of the woods here if I need to. You can see I don't know what I'm doing, and my tweezers are not working. Whoops, again, as I expected. So I have these stacks in the woods, leading edge of the woods. We'll move this unit hanging back 1, 2, 3. I'll put them here, not for any particular reason. I think I will stop there and let things go as they are. No fire phase, so we're back to the beginning of defensive fire. Try one more time. And bingo, we have some Germans. So now I have to sort out what exactly it is that's going to show up. To decide the encounter, I do a dice roll, and a 9 or less is infantry, 10 or 11 is a vehicle, and a 12 is a random event. I have a 6, so I'm going to be meeting up with an infantry. I do yet another dice roll to determine if these are elites or first line, what strength are these squads that I'll be coming up against. I rolled a 5, and so that gives me the basic German types of squads. I do another dice roll to determine if these Germans are going to have any kind of machine guns. Anything 7 or higher will get me a certain type of machine gun. And I rolled a 4, which means no, they do not have machine guns. So the only remaining question is how many squads. I do a single die roll and basically divide by 2, round up, and that tells me how many squads I'll be seeing. And it's a 1, so it's a single lone German squad. I will pull that out of the counter box and then go to place that German unit right after this. Pause. So to determine where exactly this German squad is located, first I do a dice roll, and this is going to tell me how many rows up from my furthest back unit will the infantry squad appear. So here I rolled an 11. That gives me 11 rows. So returning to the board, this squad here is my furthest back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So this is the row. What I then do, according to solitaire retro rules, is roll a handy dandy D10 to determine what hex within that row it's going to be in. And it says row 2, which is a wooded hex. Let me make sure that that's an acceptable place for that infantry unit to start. Okay, it looks like the placement rules want me, I rolled a 2, which is this woods hex here. The placement rules want me to make sure that the hex is, that it's in is protected if the unit can get fired on, so being in the woods, that would count. It also wants it to be within the line of fire of one of my units. This German unit has a range of 6 and is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hexes away from at least one of my Russian stacks here. So I believe that qualifies as a legal starting location. So now that I've placed an enemy unit, we go to defensive fire, and the defensive fire rules basically are automatic whenever there are units within 3 hexes of the enemy. Right now my closest unit is within 6, so there still is no defensive fire to speak of, but I could in principle now go ahead and take some shots at my my German friend here with this heavy machine gun. So I think I'd like to do that with this leader and the 628 stack. So that's what I will do. Okay, well, my heavy machine gun with a 9-1 leader is well within 20 hexes of that German unit. So I will go ahead and fire on that unlucky German with 8 firepower factors. The infantry fire table is a little bit different for retro than it is for regular squad leader. So let's see, I have 8 fire factors. Let's see what I get when I do make my roll. I want to get something nice and low. And I rolled an 8. An 8 on the fire factor table gets me basically nothing. So that heavy machine gun has missed. So that unit has fired. Actually, even with the die roll of 7, what that means is I have a 6 star as the result. What that means is if the morale were 6 or less, that unit would be broken. Since the morale is 7, it's not broken, but it does have a star, which means I do take an ELR check. ELR check means I believe I do another roll. German soldiers. Whenever a star result occurs on the infantry fire table, the defending hex must take an ELR check, must be taken even if there's no other effect. Make a dice roll, and if the roll is higher than that side's ELR rating, and Germans have ELR ratings of 9 in this set of rules, and I rolled a 5, which is less than 9, so I think they have passed the ELR check, so they don't get degraded. The way I'm playing is I would just go from say a German 838 or 837 or whatever 848 or whatever the highest level German squad is. I would degrade them to a 467 and then to a crew level squad. But they did not get degraded, so they are not affected by my machine gun fire. I don't think I have any other units. Actually, hold on. I do have a medium machine gun in this adjacent hex. I'm not sure I can get a line of sight to it because of that building. And if I connect the dots here, it does look like, yeah, the edge of that building does give them cover. So, oh, I also actually, when I fired on them, I should have added another +1 because they're in the wood. So the ELR check was irrelevant anyway. Okay. I'm pretty sure I took an extra Russian turn here. So fortunately nothing happened, but actually I replaced the unit during my defensive fire phase, the defensive fire phase of my part of the turn. So now we would have gone to the Germans' turn, and there are specific rules on how the Germans move. It says as long as an enemy stack has a line of fire, it will not move, and it does, and so it will not move. And then I guess the question becomes, will that unit fire at me? It will fire at my stack in the woods here, so I might be taking a hit on that 9.1 liter with the heavy machine gun. This unit is 6 hexes away within normal range and has a fire power factor of 4. So if I get to the infantry fire table here, I need to get something like a 5 or less. I'm in the woods, so that would be a 4 or less. So probably not going to hit me, but let's see what the dice do. I got a 10, so the Germans miss. And I can see what else the Germans will do here. I don't have any defensive fire because I'm not close enough, I believe. Let me check if that's actually true. Yes, that is true. Defensive fire is automatic only when you're within 3 hexes. We don't have any close combat either. So now we start back again to the Russian turn. Rally phase, none. I will now do some crazy charging towards the German unit here. Let's see. I'm going to bring these folks up from behind. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into the wooden building here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into the woods. Both of those will have a clean shot to the Russian, and we'll bring these guys up 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll just have them kind of hide out in the woods. And this unit, I will go ahead and do 1, 1.5, 2.5. I'll just keep them back here, sort of behind those woods for backup. I think I got everything moved. And that's the end of the Russian movement phase. And now the Russians can fire. So we're going to take that heavy machine gun once again, shooting into the woods at normal range, and see what we get. I'm using the actually I'm going to combine the machine gun with a fire power factor of 8 with my squad of 6. That's 14 with a leader. So 14 firepower factors gets me on the 12 column of the table here. I'm going to basically cancel out my leader and the woods. And if I get anything 7 or higher, then I get some kind of effect. 7 or lower, I should say. And I miffed with an 11. That doesn't help me. So I will say goodbye to that unit's firing. But I do have another squad here with a medium machine gun and 6 firepower factors. The medium machine gun is 4, so that's 10 at normal range. That gets me on the 8 column. The leader doesn't help me because it's a 0, but I have a +1 for the woods, so I'm on the 8 column. It says I need to get something like 7 or less, which means I need 6 or less. Alright, I rolled a 7, so again, a near miss, and that doesn't help me. None of my other units, I believe, are able, well, maybe not. I have a unit here with a light machine gun with a range of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just out of range, but I can still do a half firepower factor. So we'll go ahead and shoot the light machine gun for fun. Basically a 1. Let's see if I roll snake eyes into the woods to see if I get any kind of effect, an ELR rating. Nope, no snake eyes. So that means I don't have an ELR check. That squad is not degraded, and it is now the Germans' turn. Actually, it's not the Germans' turn. It's now defensive fire phase. So that unit automatically will fire on my stack here from 2 units away. I'm in the woods at least. So we have a 4, 6, 7 against my stack here, also in the building. I believe the building gives me some kind of a benefit, I would hope. So yes, it's a +2 on the roll. So they have 4 firepower factors. We do the dice roll. They rolled an 8, which works out to a 10. I believe that's going to give them no effect. And that's correct, no effect on my folks here. So that was their automatic defensive fire. Now we can do a close combat phase where I could move each of these stacks 1 unit. I'm going to leave them where they are, bringing, I'll just leave everyone where they are. And we will go ahead and start the German phase, no rally. And they are not going to move because they still are within their protected terrain and with line of sight. So the Germans are going to fire again on my unit. Not a lot of firepower, but let's see what they get. They rolled an 8 on a 4 firepower table. You need a 5 or lower unmodified, so that doesn't get them anything. But now we have defensive fire. I have 2 sets of units that are within 3. So I will first take my 9-1 leader with the heavy machine gun. That was 14 firepower factors against that squad in the woods. So I need to get an 8 or higher, no, 6 or lower dice roll to get some kind of effect. So I'm going to add 1 to whatever it is I roll. I rolled an 8, that's a 9, so again, no effect. My other stack here with the 8-0 leader and the medium machine gun gives me a total of 10 firepower factors, bringing me to the 8 column. Again, I'm shooting into the wood, so I'm going to add 1 to my roll. I rolled a 6. I add 1 to it, and that gives me a 7, and that's a 6 star. So I have an ELR check. Otherwise, that unit doesn't break because it needs a morale of 6 or lower to break. And so I will do the ELR check as long as I roll no more than a 9, I'm okay. If I roll a 9 or higher, I did roll a 9, so let me see if it's a 9 or higher than 9. if it's higher, okay, so I rolled a 9, that's equal to, so they again do not degrade. So I believe that takes care of my defensive fire. That German is not going to move. And so there will be no close combat. And so we're back to the Russian turn. No rallying. Now if I move, I can't fire. But I will bring these folks up into the woods. 1, 2, 3, 4. That does give me line of sight. 1, 2, 3, hiding behind those woods. 1, 2, 3, 4 for the backup squad here. So I'm done with my movement. I did not move those 2 groups with the leaders. So now I can do my fire phase, which is first starting with the 9-1 leader and a heavy machine gun on the 14 column with a +1 roll. I add 1 to this roll. See what we get. I rolled an 8, which checks out to a 9, and that gives me no effect on the 12 column. And I'm going to do the same basic type of roll for my other squad with the other leader and the machine gun. That's a 10 firepower factors. So I'm going to add 1 to the roll because I'm shooting into the woods. I rolled a 6, which gets me a 7 for 10. So I'm on the 8 column. Again, another 6 or less morale would break, but I have an ELR check. If I roll a 10 or higher, then this unit will degrade in firepower. I rolled a 3, so they do not degrade. They're hanging tough in the woods. Despite all this fire, I also now have a medium machine gun with 4. So I have 12 firepower factors. 1, 2, 3 into the woods with a +1. This unit here, 4 hexes away from this unit in the woods. So I'm going to add 1 for the train. I rolled an 11, so that's a wide miss. This unit does not have line of sight, and this unit's too far away. That's the end of my fire phase. This is a very non-lethal game at this point. And now it's the German defensive fire. They automatically choose to fire at my stack. With 4 firepower units, I'm in a building, so we're going to add 2 to the roll and see how we do. We rolled a 4. We rolled an 8. Whoops. My focus is gone. I rolled an 8. And what that means is I now have what I believe is no effect for 4 firepowers factors. So no effect from the German defensive fire. Again, no one's going to be doing any kind of movement, I would say. I'll do some kind of bonsai type move here. Bring them into the woods. Maybe they can charge that unit and be the sacrificial lambs. What I never did do is roll to see if a new German unit popped up. So I'm going to do that now. Dice roll 6 or less. Yes, I do get a German dice, a new encounter. So I go to these encounter tables, and what kind of encounter is it going to be? What kind of new enemy unit we'll be dealing with here? I rolled a 9, so that means I have another infantry. We'll see if they are the high end or low end of the infantry units. I rolled a 7, so that gives me basically another 4, 6, 7, or a group of 4, 6, 7s to contend with. How many of these? Well, will they have a machine gun? I rolled a dice, 7 or higher. I rolled an 8. So they will have a machine gun, a medium machine gun. And let's see how many squads exactly will I be up against. I roll single die and take half of the number rounding up. All right, 3 German 4.67s with a medium machine gun. I will get them on the board. All right, I have my stack of 3 4.67s with a medium machine gun. To determine where these are located, I roll 2 dice. That tells me how many rows up from the back, my backmost unit. This is going to be 11 rows up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This is going to be row double E. And then I roll my D10 to see if that's hex 4. That kind of doesn't really get me anything of particular value as far as line of sight goes. In fact, assuming all these are woods, I would have to move these up a couple of rows to get them able to see some of these units here. So I'm going to move them from here, row EE, to row CC, and this is the cell that seems to be the best location for the Germans anyway to have a line of fire onto my Russian units. I already did Russian defensive fire, so I kind of did this backwards. So I'm hoping that won't mess things up too much. But at any rate, we are not going to have any kind of... Well, I could do this. I can do an advance movement there. I guess I'll do an advance movement here. Since these... Actually, no. These... Yeah... I don't know. I think I can do that. All right. That brings me to the German turn. Rally phase, nothing to rally. I'm not sure they would gain anything by moving, so we will go ahead and say that they're not going to move, but they are going to fire. I'll start with this single squad firing again on my large 9.1 liter with the heavy machine gun stack. Let's see what we get for a dice roll here. I rolled a 6. I'm shooting into the woods, so that's no, I'm shooting into a building, so that counts as an 8 on the 4 fire power factor table. That's no effect. And this other squad pretty much only has a direct line of sight. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Actually, they have an equal line of sight to both. I think they automatically choose the more lethal enemy. I'm going to make sure that that's true. Defensive fire, fire phase, enemy units of line of sight will conduct fire, same criteria. Defensive fire. I need to check these rules. Okay, I think I'm at the top of the German turn. They are not going to move, nor is there any rallying to be done. So they're going to be firing. And the way that's going to happen, didn't I just do the single squad here? So this squad is going to fire on the more lethal unit here. Again, well, I guess it's a 50-50, right? Because there's a +2 modifier for the building, only one +1 for the rod. So I'm going to just, it says choose randomly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll do this squad if it's a 1, 2, or 3. This set of squads if it's a 4, 5, or 6 on the single die roll. And it's a 5, so they will shoot at these folks in the woods. It's a little bit of an easier shot, but not as tempting of a target. So we do have a pretty nasty little stack here. Medium machine gun with a firepower factor of 4. So this is 16 firepower factors, my 3 squads shooting into the woods at normal range. Here's my infantry fire table again. Let's see how this goes. A low roll will definitely hurt me. And they got a 6. Plus 1 is 7. So a 7 on the infantry fire table is going to hurt. Basically anything with an morale of 8 or less is going to break. So that includes my leader and my squad. So now I have 2 broken units, one of which is a squad. I need to get 6 of my squads off the board to complete the victory conditions. Alright, so that was finally some kind of action happened here. That concludes the German fire phase, but now I have defensive fire. I was going to make a fire group, which I neglected to do before. But I don't think I can now. So I think I got to try to take out that set of Germans up in the north there with as many units as I can possibly bring. Although they're not 3 units away, so that's an irrelevant point. Defensive fire is automatic. If you're within 3 hexes, you automatically fire at the unit within 3. So I do have to fire this little 9-1 leader with a heavy machine gun at these folks in the woods. 14 firepower factors with a -1 but a +1. So I'm on the 12 column of the table. My die roll is 8. I think that doesn't really help me with a 12 firepower factor. So no effect. Alright, that's all I can do for defensive fire. Let's see, that was this is the German turn. They're not going to move for advancing, close combat, or anything. So now we come back to the Russian turn. I didn't route these because they're already in the woods. So I'm assuming that that means they don't need to route anywhere. They do have some cover. But I now can try to rally these folks, starting with the leader. I need to do desperation morale. So basically I need to get a 4 or less for the leader. See if I can do that, because if I can't rally the leader, I can't rally the other thing. So I need a 4 or less. And I did it. I got a 4. So my leader has rallied himself. Thank you. I believe that then allows me to try to get another 4 and see if I can rally that squad. That would be really great at this point in time for the Russians. But I rolled an 8. And that unit does not move. It's routed until it rallies. That squad is staying put. Routing, you only get 1 chance to route. Everything else basically stays where it is. I don't think that leader can shoot the machine gun, although I'm not quite sure. I'll check. Movement phase. I'm going to, just for the sake of getting some kind of action in here, I mentioned this guy's going to go rogue. He will move up 1 into the woods, stop because he's 1 unit away from that enemy unit. The other squads, I'm going to bring these up 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And that's all I'm going to do for movement. Fire. I will now, I believe I want to get as much damage on that stack of 4.67s up there as I possibly can. So I'm going to take my 9.1 liter with a heavy machine gun, 14 firepower factors with a +1 terrain, but -1, so as a straight roll. I'm on the 12 column of the infantry fire table, and I rolled a 5. I think I might actually have caused something to happen here. I go to the 12 column, I rolled a 5, which means everything with a morale of 9 or less has broken, so all 3 of these squads are broken. That's helpful. I don't know what they gain by staying there. I think they will route to the woods, back one, just to get them a little extra cover. I'll have to check. I'm not sure if I did that properly. But that was good for the Russians anyway. This unit can't do anything. This unit will take a shot at that 4.67. So I have 3 4.67s against, or 3 4.47s against the 4.67, shooting into the woods with no leader. So it's a +1. I add 1 to my die roll, which was a 10. So pretty much no effect on that single German squad. Defensive fire is where this squad is now actually going to fire on this set of units because it's the closest and it's point blank. So we're going to have 8 firepower factors shooting into the woods. So it's +1 on the roll. So this could hurt. I'm going to roll here. The Germans doing defensive fire on my Russian squads. They rolled a 10, so that means they pretty much didn't do anything to the Germans there. I should have done a roll for seeing if any new Germans pop up. 6 or less means they do. There's a 1. There's a 3. So yes, more Germans are going to show up. And that means more rolling to determine what kind of Germans are going to show up. I roll another dice roll. 9 or less means it's infantry. It's a 5, so it is infantry. What level of infantry? 11 or 12 would be the 838s, I believe, or whatever those high-level German squads are. Otherwise, it would be 4.67s. It's a 12, so that is at least one of the 8 firepower factor squads. Let's see if they're carrying a machine gun. A high roll does mean they're carrying a machine gun. A 7, a light machine gun. And how many squads am I going to have? Again, I'm dividing this dice roll in half and rounding up. So 3 more German squads with a light machine gun. I'm going to go get those on the board. Okay, there's my 3 838s with a light machine gun, a pretty powerful little stack there. I'm going to roll how many rows ahead of my furthest south unit they will show up. 9 rows, pretty much that's going to give me to the end of the board. So I just have to roll the D10, figure out what hex in that last row they're going to be in. This is telling me 9. So ordinarily that would be here. Pretty much to get a line of sight for these folks, and a line of fire, I would have to be here. That would allow me to get to these folks, wipe out those units. and get me as close as I can to where my original location was. So I have to put them there, so they will have a line of fire. Okay. Alright, so I did have some new enemies show up, and I now have already done my defensive fire, but now I enter the close combat phase where I can now advance this stack into the hex with these Germans, and we'll have some good old-fashioned close combat happening. What I have here is a 447, two 447s against one 467. That's a light machine gun, so I guess that counts in the close combat. So I have 10 versus 4. I believe that rounds down to 2. So if I go to the close combat table, I have 2 to 1. A kill is 2 through 6. So wait, I've got 10 to 4. It's 2.5 to 1. 5 to 2. I don't know. I guess it's a 2 to 1. Yeah. It's certainly not a 3 to 1. So I'm going to go ahead, roll my dice. If I get a 2 through 6, I have killed that German unit. I got a 5, so the German unit is dead, but they get the chance to fight back at a 1 to 3, 1 to 2.5. That rounds up to 1 to 4. So if they get a 2 or a 3, the Germans have killed my units as well. That's a 6, so there's no kill. So this German is actually now eliminated. So we've actually finally killed one of these units, not just broken their morale. So that was the unit that was right in this hex, the single 467 that started the game out. Okay, so that was some close combat, and that brings us to the German turn. They have some rallying to do, although they don't have any leaders, so I think all enemy units have self-rally capability. However, there is no +1 die roll modifier for self-rally of enemy units. So they have guts. Basically, we're going to roll 7s or higher to see if any of these units can self-rally on a roll of 7 or higher. Unit number 1 does not. So we have 1 that did not. 1 that did. That's a roll of 9. Am I doing this right? I think I got it backwards. I think that first unit did rally, the second one didn't. And now we do the last one where we want to get the morale or lower. And I got an 8. So 1 unit did rally. And they will be able to man that machine gun. The other 2 broken units are going to have to wait until the next turn. So the question is do these Germans want to move anywhere? They're going to kind of need to in order to have any kind of effect on any of these units. So the medium machine gun will be brought by that non-broken squad, so it can at least start to do some damage to these 447s. Again, I need to bring 6 of these squads across the finish line. And I have 1 that's still broken, so that would be a good option there. Movement. Is any of these other Germans going to move? That killer stack up here, not sure. 1, 2, 3. I guess they have 8. No, we only have 4 movement factors because they're just squads. So 1, 2. I think there's really no advantageous place for them to go. 1, 2. Actually, if I put them here, they can shoot at these, so that'll be worth it. So we'll put them here in this edge of the woods. They're not going to be able to fire though, are they? So maybe that's not so good. I'm gonna cheat, put them back, so at least now they can fire at some of these downstream types of units. That brings us to fire phase. I'll go ahead and start with this stack with the machine gun. So I have 8 firepower factors attacking these units in the woods. So I'm going to add 1 to the roll. I rolled a 9. Adding 1 means no effect. So they have fired. These folks are broke. This one is going to fire 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess they can go here at normal range. Why don't they go ahead and do that? They're going to go after this most lethal. No, that's in a building though, right? I guess I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See which one I want to attack. Do a single die roll. I rolled a 1, so they're going to go after my 9-1 leader here on the edge in the building. So I got the 3. This is a lot of firepower. 3 times 8 is 24, 26. That puts me on the 24 column. They are shooting into a building, so that is going to be a +2 on this roll. So the Russians better hope for a high roll here. And we got a 9, which means 10, 11, because they're shooting into a building, and that is a no effect. So the Russians got lucky there. I believe that's all the German firing that can happen. So that brings us to defensive fire. And my Russian stack here will fire at these units. I have 10 firepower factors shooting at normal range against those folks in the woods, so it's a +1 to my roll. No leader. Alright, they miffed. So nothing goes on there. That's defensive fire. No other units are within 3, so no other defensive fire occurs. And the Germans are not going to do close combat. There's nothing, no advantage for them to advance. So that brings us to the Russian turn. It's the rally phase, and I do have this 1 broken unit, so I can try to get an 8 or less to see if I can rally my Russian squad. I did roll an 8. That ought to do it. So that unit comes back online. That's going to be helpful because I do want to try to build a fire group and do some real sort of damage, if at all I can. Okay. So all these units are now unbroken, which is helpful because I need to get 6 of the squads across. I think I'm going to just not do any movement this turn. Actually, we'll go ahead and move this set of units into the woods here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. They're basically in the middle of the woods, hiding out, making sure they're ready for backup as needed. We are now in fire phase. So all 3 of these stacks have a shot at these. Whoops. So I'm going to tally up my firepower and see what this is. Okay, I'm not 100% sure I'm doing this right, but in the interest of moving on, I'm going to use these 3 stacks, which have a total of 36 firepower factors right at the top of the table. And I'm going to go ahead and bear all of that fire onto this little stack here. I have a -1 leader. I'm going to assume that I can apply that -1 leadership roll to the overall roll for the fire group, which cancels out the +1 terrain modifier for the woods that stack is in. And let's see what I get on the infantry fire table with my roll. I rolled a 7. A 7 in 36 firepower factors is killed in action. Yes. Okay, so that German is gone. Now I've killed 2 4.67s. I'll have to tally up what the point value is, because remember, part of my victory depends on not just getting off the board, but killing 350 points or so of Germans. So I will check that in just a moment. That sort of obviates the firing that this stack was going to do against that same unit, and he can't reach there because of the woods blocking line of sight. So I will pause for a moment, see how many points of Germans have been killed at this point, and go from there. Okay, I killed 2 4.67s. I'm using the point value chart in the original squad leader rule book, not the point values in the retro book, because that's how I totaled these up to get my point values to begin with. So I've killed 50 points worth of units, so that's, I've still got about 300 points of Germans left to kill while still getting 6 squads off the board. Now, right now it is the German defensive fire phase. They don't have any defensive fire to do because they have no units within 3 hexes of mine, but we are going to do another roll to see if there's any more Germans that are going to pop up. So let's see what we get. We got a 7, so that means no German units appear. That's a relief to the Russians. And we then, what do we do here? We're in the, that closes the defensive fire phase for the Russians. There's no close combat. Actually, I can move these up as an advancing move in the close combat move. You can do an advance, 1 hex advance. So the Russians will move there, bringing yet more firepower. That may be dumb, given that triple stack of 8.38s, but we'll see what happens. So that's the end of the Russian turn. We now have the Germans who are in their rally phase. Remember that we have 2 broken units. That means we need to roll 7 or less for each of those to rally. So here's an 11. One of those units does not rally. And here's a 4. One of those units does rally. So we have one of these can flip over to the active side again. The Germans have their movement. That medium machine gun that's floating there in the woods, this German infantry squad will reclaim that as their movement. That means they are not allowed to fire, but we still can get this lethal 888 with the light machine gun, totaling 26 firepower factors, firing on my squad here in the woods. So that takes me on the 24 column of the firepower infantry fire table. We do our dice roll. It's low, so I think they're going to wipe everyone out. Let's see, I rolled a 3, which modifies to a 4 because of the woods. Yes, so this stack is dead. Now, basically, that's 2 squads. The machine gun will stay. Not that it's doing anyone a whole lot of good. But now I can't afford to lose any more squads. So what happened was there were 2 4.47s here that got killed in action, completely eliminated from the board. Remember, my victory conditions are getting 6 of my 8 squads off the board. So it looks like that's not going to happen, but you never know. So that was the German fire phase. I do get to have defensive fire because I have this stack within 3 units of that stack. So I have 2 4.47s and a light machine gun, 10 firepower factors. Puts me in the 8 column. I'll roll my dice. I rolled a 6. It's +1 because of wood, so I think that means I have no effect. Yeah, it would be a 6 or less morale check, but we do an ELR check. So the ELR rating for the Germans is 9. So if I roll greater than 9, then that squad will be degraded. I rolled a 7, so that squad stays as it is. All right. So that was the Russian defensive fire in the German turn. Basically, there's close combat. Do any of these units want to advance anywhere? I would say the Germans are probably, other than maybe moving that one over there, the Germans are pretty happy. Again, I'm treating this lighter green, what I think maybe brush, as woods, so we're going to stick with that. This brings us to the beginning of the Russian turn. All my units are in good order, the ones that haven't died. So movement phase, I would, I guess, like to come up. I think I can do this. Pick up that machine gun. Two movement factors, and then come back. I'm not sure if I'm cheating or not, but I'm going to take that risk. So here I am. That squad has moved, so that means they're not going to be able to fire. What I am going to do, though, in my fire phase is build a fire group. Actually, let me start with these folks. I got 10 firepower factors. I'm going to shoot at those guys first, and then see what I need to do later on. So I'm on the 8 column of the infantry fire table with a +1 on my roll. I rolled an 8, which is a 9, which means I pretty much did nothing. And now I'm going to make a fire group of these units. I can't count this one because they're not in the line of sight of that one because of these other woods. So I have 10, 14, so 24 firepower factors. After these folks, I have a -1 leader, +1 for the wood, so 24 firepower factor against that lethal stack. Let's see if the Russians can make good on this. We rolled a 5. That gets unmodified. And unfortunately for the Germans, it looks like that is a kill in action. So this squad has been dealt a severe blow. 3 8.38s are gone at once, so that's pretty lethal. I'm going to tally up the points. Those 8.38s are each worth 80 points, so that brings me up to 290 points worth of damage I've dealt to the Germans. And that's going to be helpful. So that was a little bit of a turn in the battle. It did look like the Russians were taking a bit of a beating there, and they still can. But basically, we just had the big fire group wipe out that stack. So that takes us to the defensive fire phase. The Germans with their medium machine gun are going to bring 8 firepower factors to this squad here in the woods. It's a +1 roll because they're in the woods. So let's see what we get. I rolled a 10, which is a high enough roll that I know it's not going to have any effect in terms of defensive fire. So that's the end of that. But I guess I do need... Nope, it's the end of the Russian turn. None of the Russians are going to advance for close combat, so now it's the beginning of the German turn. There's one more broken squad. Can we roll a 7 or less to unbreak that squad? We rolled a 7. That squad is now unbroken. So they are going to move to join this other unit, but I'm going to keep them separate because they're not going to be able to fire during the fire phase. This 467 and the medium machine gun is going to go after the closest stack, which is that hex of group stack in the woods there. So that's 8 fire. Is it 8 firepower factors? Yes, it is. With a +1 to the modifier to the roll. I rolled an 11, so they do nothing. So this can all get put together now. Nice happy little stack of Germans. And now I have defensive fire. So these folks are going to return fire the only place, they can, which is 10 firepower factors against that newly minted stack of 2 467s. This squad firing on that, returning fire in the defensive fire phase after they've been fired on. And let's see what our dice roll is. It's a +1. I rolled a 6. That's a 7. We have 10 firepower factors. So that means a 6 or less. So we do have to do an ELR check on these 2 units to see if they downgrade. If I roll a 9, higher than a 9, which is the ELR rating for Germans, they will downgrade. So here's squad number 1. I did roll a 12, so that will become more or less a half squad. The other one, I rolled a 7. So one of these German squads, I'm using, again, sort of the classic squad leader units. I will replace that with a crew counter to represent a sort of half squad in there. Okay, that takes care of defensive fire from the Russians. The Germans will not do any kind of advancing for close combat in their turn. That brings us back to the beginning of the Russian turn. For the rally phase, all of the Russian units at present are unbroken. We'll do movement. Again, none of these folks are going to move because they seem to be well positioned to fire on that stack of Germans that remains. So I'll go ahead and begin with the fire phase. So we'll start with the closer squad of the 2 447s with the light machine gun, 10 firepower factors, putting us on the 8 column, shooting into the woods. Let's see what we get. I rolled a 9, +1 is no effect, so that set of group squads doesn't do anything. What I will also now do, just to to even things up a little, I'll separate these 3 squads, which could all be a single, and I'll join them all as a single fire group. So here we have a leader, -1 leader, so there's 14, 20, 24, a whole bunch of 36 plus, basically. So that's a lot of firepower against those Germans in a single firepower group. The leader roll, I'm going to assume the leader cancels out the woods, so it's a straight roll. If it's low, it's bad trouble for the Germans. And it was not low, it was high. So it's a 6 plus. So that's an ELR check. Since this half squad, or the crew here, is already, can't really downgrade it anymore, I'm not sure if it goes away or I can't keep it there. I guess in the interest of making the fight drag on longer, I'll keep it there. But let's see if the 467 can pass an ELR check. Looks like it will, because I rolled low. So that stays where it is. So I probably should have divided up that set of stacks into smaller fire groups. That brings us to the beginning of the defensive fire phase, where now I do a roll to see if yet more Germans want to show up to the party. 6 or less means they do. And I rolled a 10, so the Russians are probably glad they don't hear marching German infantry coming down the road here, which means the Germans do have defensive fire from this stack. We got 6 plus 4, 10 firepower factors. That gets us to the 8 column, shooting into the woods on those Russians to the west there. Let's see what we roll. I rolled a 10, plus 1 means no effect. So that was pretty ineffectual. Close combat phase, none of those units are going to move. The Germans are not going to move. So let's see. Neither are the Russians, that is, because we're at the end of the Russian phase. So that takes us to the beginning of the German phase. There's no rallying to do. They're not going to move. So we'll go ahead and fire again these 10 firepower units on the Russian squad there in the woods. 8 firepower factors. I rolled a 5. That gets modified to a 6. And it does do some kind of damage. So that gets us a 7 on the table, which means any unit with a morale of 7 is now broken. Whoops. So that's going to hurt. It's going to hurt the Russians, because they need to get both of those units off the ground. So that does mean I'm going to have to get a leader over here and start fighting back. Anyway, that was the German fire. Since those units are broken, they cannot defensive fire, and the Germans are not going to move. So it brings us back to the top of the Russian turn. I can't do any rallying because I don't have any leaders with my units. I guess I need to get that leader up there. I don't know what's the best way to do that. I'm just going to hold off for now. I guess I can't really. take the risk. Not sure what the limit is. I think it's 3 squads. So actually I do have only one squad here. This whole stack will move over here. In the movement phase, that means they won't be able to fire. So I'm going to create, in the fire phase, a fire group of my 6 to 8, 10 fire power, 14, 18, 22, 24 firepower factors against this stack over here in the woods. I don't have a leader modifier of -1 anymore, so it's a straight roll with a +1. I rolled a 3, so that means those units are gone, because even with a 4 on the table, these units are now officially dead. So that gives me 25 plus 20 more points. So that brings me up to 335. So I'm almost there. Almost there with the point damage. If I can get to those guns, destroy them, and rally my folks and get them up out of the game before anything happens, then I will be able to finish this off. So that was, I believe, my fire phase. There are no Germans to defensive fire, so that, or to do close combat. There's now no Germans to have a starting move of their own turn. So all I really can do is try to rally in the beginning of my turn my broken infantry units with the leader. Let's see if my leader can do this. Can he rally at least one of these infantry squads? There's a 7, so one of them is rallied, and an 8. Do I get the -1 bonus when I'm rallying for the leader? I don't really remember. So I guess yes, I do. So they both are back in action because the leader modifier is beneficial in rallying my stack here. So I have a mega stack with a couple machine guns and a 9-1 leader, and my other stacks here just trying to flee and get off the board, and maybe ruin those guns while I'm at it. So movement phase, I guess we're just going to start trying to run most of these guys off the board. I'm going to leave a 4.47 and a machine gun, but we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4 off the board. Okay, so I got 2 squads off the board. That's good. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to destroy that machine gun, so they stay there. 1, 2, 3, 4. This was the leader. 5, 6. So these are all off the board. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So I've gotten 1, 2, 3, 3 squads off the board. I don't know. I probably shouldn't have also gotten my leaders off the board. but we'll see. I have nothing to fire on. I have nothing to do close combat with, but I can advance these. I'm going to send a squad this way, move these this way, move these this way, just to get them on the road. Hopefully they can get out of here. I need to get 3 more squads off the board ASAP. So that was my close combat phase. Now the German turn. What I didn't do though, I got a roll for seeing if any new Germans show up. Even though there's no Germans to do defensive fire, I roll to see if there's an encounter. And I rolled a 7, which means there is not. So it looks like the Germans are going to make it. Because destroying that medium machine gun did take away some points from the Germans, specifically 20 more points. So I got my 355 points of damage. I just need to get the rest of those squads off the board. So actually I could get that other guy back on the road and out of here. So whose turn is it? I don't remember now. I think it's the we're at the end of the Russian turn. There's nothing the Germans can do, so we're back to the Russian turn again. Rally phase, nothing to rally. We're going to move everything off the board. These folks, I got 4 more squads off the board, and these other guns. 1, 2, 3, 2. There we go. And then I guess I can just go 1, 2, because it's a woods hex. 3, 4. They're not quite off the board, so that's a little scary. Nowhere to fire. Defensive fire, we do 1 more check. This is going to be a risky thing to see if any Germans will show up on a roll of 6 or less. I rolled a 10. They do not show up. So I can do an advance move in my close combat and get my last Russian off the board. And the Russians have basically met all the victory conditions, as far as I can tell, by destroying 355 points worth of German units and getting 6 out of 8 squads off the north end of the board. So all in all, I'd have to say it was kind of interesting. The Russians were able to walk pretty much 2/3 of the way up the board before any Germans actually showed up. But the Germans did put up a fight. We had some super stacks, but a couple good fire groups were able to knock out those Germans and basically finish out by sprinting down that road through the woods off the edge of the board. All right, that was a pretty good test for me. I'm sure I broke a lot of the rules, but I think I learned a lot playing this, and I hope other people will find it interesting too.